Hey, welcome back, everyone. So, today I want to do an in depth episode about the food crisis because, well, I've been looking into it a lot. I've been researching the history of it. I've been looking at what different countries in the world are doing in terms of regulations, what's happening right here in the United States. And I can say now pretty definitively that absolutely there is a food crisis coming, and it's a manufactured one. This is a man made crisis that we're facing right now. And a lot of it comes down to nitrates, restrictions on nitrates. I know people are focused on, the burning of the production facilities and so on. I mean, I do think that's an issue. Keep in mind there's like 33,000 or something like that, production facilities in the US, food production, and I think maybe 100 have had it, not even 100, maybe like 50. The bigger issue in my eyes is the nitrates, the restrictions on nitrates. And not only that, but also some of the killing off of cattle and chickens and so on. They're killing them off by the tens of millions. It's absolutely insane, some of the data on this. But today I want to focus heavily on the fertilizers because this is where the real story is, as far as I see it and as far as my research has gone. There are many countries in the world right now restricting nitrates. And when you hear that, it might not sound that nefarious at first because people say, "Oh well, nitrates they get into the water supply, and you can use natural fertilizers. There's other options." I'm going to show you some real world examples of this of countries that have done it. Sri Lanka being one of the clearest examples. Where a couple years ago, I think 2019 actually, so 3 years ago, they actually banned chemical fertilizers, and the country is still struggling to respond to it. Were it not for the sake of other countries basically saving their lives, they'd have a real famine on their hands. Even then, they're having mass protests and having some pretty serious problems. Right now, as we speak as well, the Netherlands in Europe, the Dutch people are, the Netherlands, they just put restrictions like this on their farms. And because of the way it works, because they want to reduce nitrates by 30 to 70%, this means that they have to close down farms. And when it gets into the real kind of nitty gritty of it, nitrates end up in the long run in terms of policy not only affecting crops and so on, but affecting cattle because they claim that cattle emit nitrates or whatever like that. This is why, for example, in New Zealand right now, they're putting, and it sounds crazy, but they're putting masks on cows to prevent cows from burping because they say that cows are emitting CO2 through their burps. And they're also right now trying to restrict nitrates. In Canada, they're trying to restrict nitrates. In Germany, they're trying to restrict nitrates. In the United States, there are restrictions on transporting nitrates. There are different states in the U.S. that are putting restrictions on nitrates. All of this, folks, is coalescing into a huge, huge crisis on food. And so I'm going to show you this. Let's jump into it. Those of you on YouTube, on Rumble, keep in mind after about half an hour, we will jump exclusively to Epic TV. So if you don't have a subscription yet, be sure to grab it. We're giving you a free trial that's in the description below the video. We're also doing a Independence Day sale, 50% off. So be sure to grab that if you haven't already. Also, folks, we're going to have a special guest on, Michael Jan, war correspondent. He actually just landed recently in the Netherlands, and he's reporting from the ground with the protesters, who are the farmers and the truckers who are standing up against the new anti-nitrate policies that are put in place there. Some really profound stuff, and he has some interesting information. All right, that said, let me jump into the big picture of this first. Let me talk about what's happening in the Netherlands. So first off here, this is Epic Times. It says, Dutch farmers protest climate mandates that would cut livestock by 30%. And keep in mind that the Netherlands, even though it's a small country, is the world's 5th largest food exporter. They're a major, major source of food for the whole world. As was, of course, Ukraine and as was Russia. And if you cut 2/3 of the biggest producers out, you're going to have some problems at your hands. Let me go over this. It says here, Dutch farmers are continuing their demonstrations against a government climate policy that officials expect to end many farmers' livelihoods. With organizers on Telegram planning July 4th protests they say will flatten the whole of the Netherlands. The message calls on concerned farmers and citizens to organize their own regional actions with the goal of closing all distribution centers for food supplies and all major polluters until the government changes its plans. It continues further in, stating, in 2021, the Netherlands coalition government proposed slashing livestock numbers in the country by 30% to meet nitrogen greenhouse gas targets. They want to get rid of cows. On June 10th, the government issued a national and area-specific plan for curbing nitrogen greenhouse emissions, and those emissions are heavily driven by ammonia from livestock manure, the ammonia nitrate. Some parts of the country would have to slash those emissions by 70 or even 95%. And as part of that, in order to meet the standards, farms will have to close down. They're going to have to close down a lot of the farms. Now, that's currently happening in the Netherlands. Actually, I mean, this is some footage here. They're basically shutting down the entire country right now. I have a friend, actually, whose family lives in the Netherlands, and he was showing me photos his mom sent him. I couldn't get him for the show, unfortunately. But of the supermarkets in the Netherlands, and it looks worse than China. There is no food on the shelves. There's nothing. Out of all the photos, there were two items visible on all the food shelves, and this is, again, that's partly because of the protests. Keep in mind, it's not because there's like an actual food crisis. It's because the farmers are protesting, the truckers are protesting, Germany's moving in, some of the German farmers and so on are moving in to help with the protests. Because really this is not just a Netherlands thing, this is an all of Europe thing as it's spreading. Because the European Commission has regulations like this as well that's going to affect all of Europe. And again, in the US, they're trying to do some of the same thing. And in Canada, and in New Zealand, and in a lot of other countries. Now, there's one example of where this could go that I think is really important to note. And I'm going to show you what happened in Sri Lanka. We'll get Michael Yon on in just a bit, talk about what's happening in the Netherlands. But let me show what's happening in Sri Lanka. Because Sri Lanka is kind of the canary in the coal mine, you know, where the miners will bring a canary into the coal mine with them, because if they lose oxygen, of course, you know, the canary is going to die first, and you know, it kind of warns the miners of an air crisis, right? They know the canary is going to collapse, and if the canary collapses, well, it means they should probably get the heck out of there. Sri Lanka, unfortunately, was kind of the canary in the coal mine. Sri Lanka did many of these policies a few years ago. They implemented the same things that many countries are doing right now. And they are the collapsed canary in the coal mine, warning the whole world of where these policies will lead if they're implemented. Let me show you. This is the Hindu. This is last year in 2021. It says Sri Lanka revokes ban on fertilizers. So 2019, they banned them. And it had a detrimental impact on the country. Absolutely detrimental. They're still trying to bounce back from it, and it's still unclear whether they even can bounce back from it. Were it not for the support of other countries, you would have probably mass starvation and death there right now. It says Sri Lanka abandoned its quest to become the world's first completely organic nation on Sunday, announcing it would immediately lift an import ban on pesticides and other agricultural inputs. And let me just finish this, then we'll bring Michael on. Another one here, Mina FN, it says, food crisis in Sri Lanka, only 50% yalla harvest is possible, even if fertilizer comes. And the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO country representative for Sri Lanka and the Maldives, told the Sunday Morning, we are in a very severe situation. That said, can we come out of it? I'm sure we can salvage agriculture if we put our hearts, minds, and finances to it. And one more here from The Guardian. They're saying this, it will be hard to find a farmer left in Sri Lanka once all this is done. They didn't even ban all fertilizer. They banned chemical fertilizers because they wanted to go organic. Now, I personally support organic. I think that's fantastic. If we could find a way to make organic work on a level that can maintain like the survival of the human race based on the current way the world works, fantastic. I love it. But we're seeing now you can't just jump into it through policy, through regulation. The Guardian says this, Sri Lanka is grappling with the worst economic crisis since its independence in 1948. And it says that, the full implication of this ill-advised policy on fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, which has now been reversed, are only just now being realized. It took 3 years for them folks to feel the impact of it. It took technically 2 years for them to realize the impact of it. And only now they're realizing what a deep, deep, inescapable crisis they are in because of that. Now, it says farmers say their livelihoods are under threat for the first time in its modern history. Sri Lanka, which usually grows rice and vegetables in abundance, could run out of food. As harvests drop and the government can no longer afford the food imports the country has become over-dependent on in recent years because they're living on life support. Sri Lanka is on life support because of the bad policies restricting fertilizers. Says the rice yields dropped 2.92 million tons in 21 to 22, down from the previous year's 3.39 million. And the Speaker in Parliament last week warned of imminent starvation among the island's 22 million people. Starvation, folks. It's real. All right. I'll bring Michael on in just a minute. Then I want to go real deep into this today, folks. I want to go really deep on this topic with you today, because I want to show you exactly what's happening in the world right now with this. Because not only is this happening, but I would say now definitely that it's intentional. Before we get into that, folks, we do have a sponsor today. Today's episode is brought to you by Secure. Now, over 155 million Americans are affected by data leaks in 2020. The average American had their personal data stolen about 4 times over the past year. People get anxious because they can't protect their online data or their online activity, but now there's a new email and messenger app called Secure. That's Secur. They can give privacy and security for sending emails and messages. Secure's server and data center are hosted in Switzerland, which has the strictest data privacy laws in the world. Secure does not rely on big tech companies like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, which also means it's not subject to the Intrusive Cloud Act. Secure does not ask for your phone number, it does not mine your data, it does not upload your contacts. It functions by adding people you know, then adding their secure numbers, and you can still chat with non-secure users by sending them an invite. Secure protects you from hackers getting onto your phone, and you also have privacy while on the app. Now, it's only $5 for the messenger or $10 for the email and messenger package. You can visit secure.com today for a free 7-day trial. That's sekur.com. Or you can use the promo code Joshua to get 25% off. And big thanks out to Secure for sponsoring today's episode. All right, folks, that said, let's get on Michael Yon. Michael Yon, many of you know him. He's been on the show before. He's a world-renowned war correspondent. He was one of the biggest names covering the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Really, while other journalists were using their telescopic lens, Michael Yon is using a wide-angle lens right there in the front lines with troops. He tends to be on the front lines of any conflict, of any major issue, and he's on the front lines right now in the Netherlands, reporting on what's happening with these new restrictions on, cattle and farms. Let's bring Michael on and get started. Those of you curious, also, today's drink is ginseng tea. Hey, Michael, good to see you.
Wish I had some ginseng tea. I'm trying to score some green tea. Yeah, I just, I was just in Mexico, as you know, just days ago, and flew from Texas over here to Netherlands. Actually, I went to Hungary and then back to Netherlands, and now I'm here with the farmers because the farmers in the Netherlands are under attack. And as you know, little Netherlands, only 17 million people here. It's a tiny country. They have the most efficient farmers in the world. It's unbelievable. They're arguably the number 2 food exporter in the world. This tiny country.
I've seen mix. I've seen them. I believe 2 years ago they were the 5th, but now I've seen also that people are saying they're like the 2nd biggest food exporter, which is crazy. I wonder if it has to do with Russia and Ukraine and so on.
That could be. And as you know, you can measure that by dollar output or volume, or you know how this goes. So, yeah. But let's just say it's in the top 10, right? Very securely in the top 10, and it's a huge food exporter. It's very important. And one thing that nobody argues about is that they're actually the most efficient farmers in the world, the Dutch. And now the dark cult of Davos is trying to destroy these farmers. And obviously this has major security consequences, not just for Netherlands, but for all of Europe and the world, right? I mean, this is one of our key grocery stores right here, this tiny country. And so the farmers, they're trying to put these farmers out of business and trying to confiscate their land. And you know about information war. Nobody needs to tell Josh about information war. And you're an expert on this. So they're using this time. They're using nitrous oxide, and ammonia. They're saying, "Yeah, you're poisoning the world with this." Okay, whatever. We know we don't even need to talk about that. We know it's just a decoy. And the farmers here and the normal people actually are tracking with it. They realize they're just trying to take their land and the dark party of Davos is trying to control the food supply. And as you know, if you control the food supply, you control that population completely, right? And
Yeah.
so so the farmers are rising up. They know they're going to be put out of business, but they're being commanded. Well, look, you just talked about Sri Lanka, and you just
Yeah.
talked about what happened there, so we don't need to recap that. Last time I was in Sri Lanka, there was plenty of food, with no issues with food. Suddenly they go organic, and they're starving, right? And so these people are the best farmers in the world here. Nobody needs to handhold them and tell them how to run a farm. And the food here is unbelievably good. And so the bottom line is they're trying to knock them out of business, and which would put all of Europe on its knees food wise. I mean, and they're doing the same in Germany and other countries as well. France has for many years really guarded their small farmers, and now you see the wisdom of that. Over the years, you might say, "Oh, it's kind of crazy economically. You should, But now we see the wisdom of distributing that risk among many and keeping that knowledge base within your borders. Right now, Russia, I was just told by an intelligence friend 45 minutes ago that Russia is now offering free land to farmers. I don't know if that deals with these Dutch farmers, but it could be they're trying to draw this. These are the best farmers in the world. They are worth more than their farms because you can take them and make great farms anywhere with the knowledge in their heads, right? So this is like getting free physicists from Russia, right? They're already educated. They know what they're doing, and so these farmers are gold. I would be poaching these farmers off like crazy if I was Russia, right? And
Yeah.
so go ahead, Josh.
Hey, Michael, what are you hearing from where this is coming from? Like, was it just the
Davis.
Dutch government, or is this coming from? Tell us about that.
Uh, the, the farmers all say it's WEF, World Economic Forum. I mean, you
It's
know it.
world. It's
You've
so
talked.
the push for this anti-nitrate agenda. This is World Economic Forum. They're saying.
Yeah, but they're using the stalking horse of the leftist Dutch government, right? But everybody sees through it, except for the people that are, in cognitive dissonance and who will soon be hungry. Right now, they're blocking my cell. Let's say is reporting that 8 distribution centers are being blocked right now by the farmers, and I'm getting photos coming in from around Netherlands right now. Many of the grocery stores' shelves are empty. And so, this is waking up a lot of the Dutch who are not yet tracking with what's going on because many people are not tracking. Many are and tend to be highly supportive of the farmers. But many are just going about their daily lives, just like Americans and Canadians and others do. And they need to get that wake up call like, listen, you are going to get hit sooner or later. Would you rather have your shelves empty now for just a really short time or be under the thumb of the beast forever? Because if these farmers are knocked out, you can't just, and let's say a 1 or 2 generations passes, all that knowledge is gone. You've broken the chain of knowledge and it's just gone. And you'll always be under somebody else's thumb for your food security. And as you know, nobody needs to tell Josh. When they control the food, they control you. And that's what's at stake here. Now, in the face of global famine, which you have talked about many times, taking out this top food exporter out of that equation, even as we know we're about to see massive starvation around the world, I mean, only the biggest psychopaths in history could possibly even consider doing that, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, Michael, I know you and I have talked quite a bit about the history of famines, and I think you're probably you're better versed in this than I am. I know you've read probably dozens of books on it. Based on what we saw happen under Mao Zedong in China, based on what we saw happen under Lenin in the Soviet Union, Are you seeing any kind of correlations with what's happening in the world right now, with the, say, burning of the production facilities, the killing off of cattle, the killing off of chickens, and the restrictions on seeds and farming and so on? I mean, do you see correlations between now and then?
Oh, the correlations just jump off the page. You can, for instance, a great book would be Red Famine, or read Mao's Great Famine. Read those two books. But read Red Famine first, and you'll see what's happening. For instance, the farmers here are being demonized, just as the kulaks were demonized in Ukraine and Ukraine, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
kulak,
The wealthy peasants or the wealthy farmers in Russia. Yeah,
that's right. Exactly. And that's what they're doing here. Oh, they're poisoning our land with this, nitrous oxide and ammonia. It's like, are you crazy? It's like, that's how they're feeding you. They're not poisoning the land. I mean, they've been farming here for thousands of years. Okay, think about this, Josh. You're a very global thinking person. When you knock out the most efficient farmers in the world and people still need to eat, then you're going to have inefficient farmers pouring even more chemicals and fertilizers into the ground. This is great soil here. It's obviously from a global, save the world perspective, smarter to do it. If you could make this whole country a farm and just get rid of all the buildings, that would be the smart thing to do with these farmers because they know how to do it, right? So obviously it makes no sense whatsoever to destroy this knowledge base of these incredibly good, great farmers and then get somebody else to grow it, like who? China? Who's going to grow
yeah.
the food? We know we're going to
You
see people starve to death. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Oh yeah, well, I was going to ask you. I was reading stories about other countries coming in to support the farmers there. I know it's not just farmers; it's also, I believe, truckers, bikers. I've heard, others as well,
Fishers.
fishermen, and I heard other countries are sending some folks into protest as well. What countries do you see joining in? How do you see this growing? I guess across more of Europe. Do you see this
I'm here.
expanding?
I'm here. I just flew
Yeah,
all the way from
Michael's there. There
Texas.
you go. Yeah.
I'm like, man, you're messing with Dutch farmers. I just flew from Texas. So I just left Mexico and came here and left Mexico, drove up to Texas, jumped on an airplane, and I'm sitting here. I mean, this is big. This is huge. And Germans are involved. Ich spreche Deutsch. I speak German, so I may mosey on over to Germany soon. I learned Germany when I was in the Army, stationed over there, that sort of thing. So, I mean, I may be with the German farmers soon. The German farmers are showing solidarity. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I was going to say because the Germans I've seen, they're actually facing similar restrictions on the horizon. In fact, folks, I'm going to show you some stories on that too. We're going to go into that later. It seems like what I've been reading is that the European Commission, what you're seeing right now in the Netherlands, the European Commission itself is starting to push these kinds of policies. And Germany was actually one of the targets of this originally, meaning the farmers there, they have some background on dealing with this type of policy. And so I'm wondering, I mean, I've heard mixed things. I know the Dutch, that people in the Netherlands, they tend to be masters of diplomacy. They're very good at kind of making amends and making deals. Maybe we'll see a deal get struck there. But this is not just a Netherlands thing. If it fails in the Netherlands, they're going to move to somewhere else, as far as I see it. And Michael, I'm curious. Do you see that trajectory? How do you see this developing? Do you think this is going to continue? Do the farmers look like they're going to strike a deal? Where's this going?
How can the farmers strike a deal? The only deal that the dark cult of Davos wants to have is the farmers gone. And that's what Stalin did with the kulaks, right? I mean, gone, literally gone. And so they're offering, and how they're dividing the people now is saying, the farmers are poisoning the land. We should just take their farms and open it up to development and open it up to, all right. So that's how Stalin did it. He's like, okay, you can have the farmland. All these kulaks are doing all these bad things, and that's why you're having problems. And hey, look at all that land. So you divide the people with those useful idiots. Go ahead, Josh. You're gonna say
Yeah, so
something?
we're gonna jump over to Epic TV, folks. So those of you on YouTube or Rumble, we're giving you a free trial. Jump into the description below the video, grab your free trial. We're also having a sale right now for Independence Day. So happy 4th of July, and it was yesterday. Folks, come join us in Epic TV. We still have an hour left on the show, over an hour. Join us there now. We'll see you over there.
It was a pretty lonely job for a period of time. People that had known me my whole life that were calling and saying, Christy, get in line with these other governors. This is going to be politically destruction for you.
Today I sit down with the governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, the only governor to never lock down businesses during the COVID pandemic.
At the end of the day, I wanted to make sure that I could look back years from now and be proud of the fact that I did my job and only my job. If leaders do overstep their authority, especially in a time of crisis, that's when we break this country. And I didn't want to be that person.
We discuss her life, COVID policy, transgender athletes in women's sports, and the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Her new book is titled Not My First Rodeo: Lessons from the Heartland.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick.
All right, so Michael, let's continue this discussion over on Epic TV. The rest of it, folks, again on YouTube, Rumble, jump over now. We'll see you on Epic TV. All right, so Michael, actually, we have Roman Balmakov. He does Facts Matter, our show. He's going to be, he's flying out right now, so maybe you two can link up out there.